State Cyclones in the Big 12 title game. But welcome to Championship Saturday. Hope everybody's having a great week and a great day. It is December the 7th, and the Niners are in a gotta-have-it weekend. I mean, this is it. They can be pushed no further. They can take no more days off. They can relax, not in the slightest, because it's now or it's never. I mean, it's as simple as that. I'm looking at the injury report, and, it's going to be kind of interesting. DJ Moore is the number one receiver for the Chicago Bears. He's a great player. He's got a quad injury. Didn't practice Wednesday. Didn't practice Thursday. Was limited on Friday and is listed as questionable. So that's going to be an injury to watch for on the Bears side for sure. DeAndre Swift, their starting running back, another one. This is another guy to look for. He's got a quad injury. Didn't practice Wednesday. Didn't practice Thursday. Was limited participant in practice on Friday. He's questionable. Why is that such a big deal? Because Roschon Johnson is their backup. They moved Khalil Herbert at the trade deadline, I think, to the Bengals. So Roschon Johnson is their backup running back. He's been concussed last week. He didn't participate in practice on Wednesday, didn't participate in practice on Thursday, and he didn't participate in practice on Friday, and they've called him out. So it's going to be interesting to see who runs the rock for the Bears if DeAndre Swift, who, by the way, same guy that Demo Lenore said night-night to in that Philly game last year. That was Lenore smoking DeAndre Swift. So we'll see if Swift gets a little payback. But the best receiver and the best runner for the Bears, both are questionable, and both really didn't practice this week except for a little bit on Friday. So that is going to be something to watch for sure on their side. Now, on the Niners side, Dre Greenlaw's out. He's not going to be playing this week. They're not going to activate Dre for this game. There was some thought that they maybe would, but it sounds like Shanahan says, get ready for Dre in the Rams game. So Dre's out. So the Niners, once again, are not going to have their all-world linebacker, and they've missed him. Oh, my God, they've missed him. In a way, it just he's been so profoundly missed. I mean, he is their heart. He is their swagger. He is their intimidator. He is their second-level defender that makes every tackle against the run. I think the Niner run D hasn't been much the last few years, but Greenlaw and Warner, and before when Aziz were here, those three guys alone have been the difference. And Afonga as well. They've missed Afonga against the run, but they missed Greenlaw against the run in the worst way. So he's out. Jordan Mason's out. High ankle sprain, done for the year, headed towards the IR. Didn't even see him roll the ankle at all. I mean, that tells you how football is. George Odom's got a knee injury. He did not participate in practice on Thursday or Friday, and he's been ruled out. So that's a major coverage unit guy that you don't have in George Odom. Trent Williams, Trent's going through hell. Physically, emotionally, probably mentally. I mean, we all know what Trent is. Trent's going to Canton. Trent's one of the greatest offensive linemen in the history of football. He took a couple shots the last few weeks to get out there with the ankle. He didn't get out there last week, but and when you take those Toradol shots, I mean, there's a price to be paid on the back end for sure. And you can do it once, you can do it twice, man. You try to do it much after that, and it's not good. And so he did not practice Wednesday, did not practice Thursday, did not practice Friday, and he's out. And of course, what he's gone through with his infants, and I mean, I can't even, our thoughts and prayers go out to Trent and Mooney Ward, and what these two gentlemen have gone through this year is just the unspeakable. So, and it's so much bigger than football that the Niners, I'll say the one thing about the Niners as an organization, man, they sure keep things in the right perspective. I mean, they could easily be like, get out there, but they're not, because they know that, this comes first, and life comes first, and family comes first, and those kinds of things. So good for the 49ers for taking the high road and treating their players with respect. But there'll be no Trent. And, the one good news from last week, last week was a train wreck, right? There was not a lot of good news. But there was some good news. And to me, what I took away from last week is that Jalen Moore and Ben Bartch on the left side of the 49er offensive line played great. Jalen Moore played really well at left tackle. Ben Bartch played really, really well at left guard. So, and those guys are going to go again. We'll see about Banks. So those are the guys that are out. Trent, Odom, Mason, Greenlaw, all are out. Bosa's not going to play, most likely. He's doubtful. So 75% chance he doesn't play. He's got a hip. He's got the oblique. I mean, we knew it was going to be multiple weeks. And so I don't think Nick's going to go. But we'll see. He's 50-50. He's 75% unlikely to go. Aaron Banks is 50-50. He's questionable. He was concussed last week. He was in the protocol. He didn't practice Wednesday, didn't practice Thursday, and didn't practice on Friday. So I would say Banks is not going to go, especially since Bartch is playing well. But that's one to look for tomorrow. Tomorrow, when you tune in to Adam and JD and Dennis for the pregame show, the three names or the four names that you'll be listening for in the update in the pregame are Nick Bosa. Is he going to go? Aaron Banks. Is he going to go? Flanagan Fowles, who's got a knee injury. He was limited Thursday and Friday. He's listed as questionable. And then Afanga, who's, playing with he's got a broken wrist. He was a limited participant on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. He's out there with a cast. He's trying to gut it out, and they need him. In the worst way, because he's probably their smartest football player on the defensive side of the ball. He's like a coach on the field is what he is. So he's key. He's key. And he's questionable. Mooney did not participate in practice on Friday. So I don't know his status either. And that obviously, I don't know. I'm not sure if Mooney's going to go or not. But he's obviously a key guy. He's probably their best corner, as when push comes to shove. As far as the rest of the injured guys, Yatir Gross-Matos, Demo Lenore, Jordan Elliott, Sam Aquinu, Dominic Pooney, Brock, they're all going to go. They were all full participants Thursday and Friday. Or Yatir was limited on Thursday, but the rest of those guys were full participants on Thursday and Friday, and they're all going to go. So that's the injury report as it sits the day before the game. This Bears team is a lot better than people think. They really are. And if you think this is going to be an easy game, think again. The Bears have some exciting offensive weapons. They fired their offensive coordinator, Shane Waldron. Then they fired the head coach, Matt Eberflus. And Thomas Brown has been the interim head coach, and he's been in charge of the Chicago offense now for 3 weeks, and they've done really, really well in the red zone in those 3 weeks. Chicago is third in red zone touchdown percentage on the year at 66.6%. Over the last 3 weeks with Brown as the offensive coordinator, their touchdown percentage in the red zone is 83.3%. And Williams has played much, much better football. And they roll into this game with a red-hot Keenan Allen. So, this is not going to be easy. Caleb's good, and he can run. And, he looked bad early in the year, but now, if you faced him in September, advantage you. But in December, he's starting to get it, and he's starting to play better. DeAndre Swift, big back, very physical. Rome Odunze, first-round wide receiver. Keenan Allen, I just told you he's hot. DJ Moore's hurt, but he's their number one target. Cole Kmet's a serviceable tight end. So they've got weapons on offense. You say, well, why are they bad? Why are they 4-8? They've lost 6 in a row. But if you look at these games and you watch the All-22, they outplayed the Commanders. They really did. They beat the Commanders. And then they lost on the Hail Mary when the Bears defensive back was caught celebrating with the crowd while the play was going off. And then the guy that he was supposed to be defending caught the Hail Mary. So they gaffed that one. Then they blew the Green Bay game on a blocked field goal. They had tons of opportunities to beat Minnesota, lost in overtime in week 12. And then last week on Thanksgiving, they lost in Detroit when Eberflus, I don't know what the hell happened there, but he failed to call a timeout. He had 30 seconds left. They had the field goal easily within range, and they didn't get anything, and So he's fired. But he has a timeout left. I was joking. You can get ready for the Chris Webber, Matt Eberflus commercial on the Super Bowl of, Webber needed a timeout and Eberflus gets fired and lost on Thanksgiving with a timeout to spare. But the Niners are in a gotta-have-it mode. They've lost 3 NFC West games. They led in the fourth quarter, and they've been chasing their tail all year because of it. And they got to win this game. And this Bears defense has some flaws, but over the last 3 weeks, they've been pretty good. They've gotten better over the last 3 weeks. Now, their defensive line has struggled. They're 9th in scoring defense. But, you look at the 49er defense. The 49er defense the last 3 weeks has fallen apart. The 49ers have allowed 31 points a game over the last 3 weeks. That's third worst in the NFL. So the 49ers are 24th in points allowed on defense, 24.8 for the year. But over the last 3 weeks, they're giving up 31 a game. They've just been absolutely no resistance at all in the last 3 weeks. So this is going to be a huge, huge game for the Niners. It's a gotta-have-it moment. It's now or it's never. And I heard Tim Ryan yesterday say that, Guerendo, the key with Isaac Guerendo is going to be ball security. He's only had 42 carries all year. He's already had a couple of really ugly fumbles. Or when I say ugly, I mean, there's fumbles where, hey, you've got it, and somebody rips it away. Okay. Then there's Isaac Guerendo fumbles where he runs up the back of his offensive lineman, bumps into him, and drops the ball. I mean, he's had a couple fumbles this year that are like high school Harry stuff. I mean, look really, really bad. Like, are you kidding me? This is a pro football player? This is a pro football player whose job it is to tote the rock, and he bumps into his own guy and drops it? It's happened multiple times. So ball security is his thing. If you told me what kind of, predict his day tomorrow, I'd say he goes 15 carries, 3 tackles for loss, 3 carries that are like less than 2 yards, and 2 carries that are more than 40 yards. He could wind up with like a stat line that's like 15 carries, 95 yards, 5 tackles for loss, 6 negative play, 4 negative plays, and then 2 house calls from 50 plus yards. I mean, he's the weirdest running back in that he doesn't have a lot of feel or a lot of instincts, but he's so big, so fast. And if you can get him on that second level, DBs look at him, and at first glance, they think he's 1 speed, and then they realize, no, wait a second, this guy's way faster than that. This might be the fastest man on the field at 223 pounds or 227 pounds or whatever it is that he weighs. So guys take bad angles. So Guerendo's a house call waiting to happen. You got to get him in there. You got to get him get him his touches. But you also have Patrick Taylor, very physical runner, runs upright, but very physical, and catch the ball. You also have Izzy Abanaconda, who's looked very good on the practice field and runs in the low 4.3s. So I'm eager to see, who the running back distribution in this game. But the Niners have fumbled 21 times in 12 games. 21 fumbles? 21 fumbles in 12 games. I mean, that's a problem. So what's the key in this game? Run the ball, protect the ball. Run the heck out of the football and protect the ball. And then get after Caleb Williams. He's been sacked 49 times on the year. Leonard Floyd has to have a big day against Brandon Jones. They have Matt Pryor at offensive guard. You have to pick on Matt Pryor. He's one of the worst offensive linemen in the game. The Niners have to stop the run. They got to show they can stop the run. They got to get Debo involved against some of these. The Bears play a lot of cover 3. Get Debo rolling out there against the cover 3. Chicago is 31st in the NFL at defending wide receivers. Jordan Addison went off against them for 162 yards. TJ Hawkinson, who's a tight end, but he had 114 yards against them. Green Bay had 141 yards after the catch. So, the Niner receivers have got to play big in this game. As I said, the Bears typically play a ton of zone. They play a lot of cover 3 with a single high. Chicago's among the NFL's league leaders in cover 3. They use it over 40% of their defensive snaps. Debo dominates cover 3. Debo dominates against the zone. Expect the Niners to use the screen game quite a bit in this game against the Bears zone. Expect the Bears to play some more man than they typically play. But I think the key to the victory for the 49ers is twofold. They've got to run the ball. Chicago is a run defense that can be exploited. You have to take pressure off Brock Purdy. You don't have Brandon Ayuk. You've got a much better run-blocking offensive line than a pass-blocking offensive line. Detroit ran for 194 yards, 5.9 a carry. Minnesota ran for 124 yards. Chicago or Green Bay ran for over 100 yards, 81 yards after contact. And the Bears have missed 25 combined tackles during the last 3 games. So run the rock a lot. Run the ball a lot at Chicago. And then the other side of the ball, you got to be able to stop the run, man. I mean, Sorensen, the Niners' situational defense is atrocious. Absolutely atrocious. The last 11 red zone trips against the Niner D have resulted in touchdowns. 11. The last 3 games, they've had 11 trips to the red zone against their D, 11 touchdowns scored. The Niners need better play from their defensive line, especially their defensive tackles. In the Niners' 5 wins, they've given up 71 yards rushing per game. Really good. In the Niners' 7 losses, they're giving up 154 on the ground. Buffalo just ran for 220. So you got to stop Chicago. Chicago's not running it well. They've rushed for 100 yards in only 1 of their last 5 games. I just told you, DeAndre Swift is banged up. Didn't even practice much of the week. You have to run the ball against Chicago's defense, and you have to stop Chicago's run. If you do that, you got a great chance to win. All right, we're going to do this. We're going to take a timeout. One of the key moves today I'm looking for is who gets activated off the Niner practice squad, and it could be Ke'Shawn Vaughn. I caught up with him in the locker room yesterday. We'll let you hear some of that conversation. Bottom of the hour, Dave Lombardi is going to stop by, and we'll preview the game with David and get his thoughts on what he sees for Niners and Bears. But up next, our conversation from inside the locker room with one of the great names in football, one of the great names in sports, Ke'Shawn Vaughn. He's next on 49er Forecast on The Sports Leader.
want a guy who can play like a starting back, and anybody on our roster we'd like to believe can play like a starting back, and that's kind of how we look at all of our guys, because you think of every year here that I've been here, minus last year and the half of the year before with Christian, we've gone through 4 backs, and now we are down to our 4th back with especially with Elijah going on IR to start this season out in training camp, and so now he's going to get his opportunity, and I believe he can run like a starting back. That's what I expect from him. He's done it in the times that he's gotten it this year, and he's going to have 5 games to do this, and I think he'll get better as he goes, and hopefully this can be something he really takes advantage of and leads him into being a better player next year for us also.
This is where you get your faithful fix. 49ers Forecast with Larry Krueger keeps rolling on KNBR, the sports leader.
All right, we're here in the Niner locker room with Niner running back Ke'Shawn Vaughn. And Key, how you feeling? You're signed back to the practice squad. The season's continuing on. How you feeling?
Thankful, grateful. Always grateful for the opportunity to be inside the NFL locker room. Gotta appreciate these moments.
You have been a star at Vanderbilt, as good as almost any back in the country. Is it a humbling experience to come into an NFL level? It's another level. There's a lot more competition. Every guy in here was a star somewhere.
It's humbling being here. Like you said, when the NFL, everybody was always that 1% guy on their team who was the biggest man. So now it's kind of just finding your role, figuring out what you do best for the team, help aid, and that's kind of where I'm at right now.
What do you think of the vibe in here? You haven't gotten a chance to go yet, but you've been in the room all year. What do you think of the room? What do you think of the team?
As soon as when I first got here, the team just was different as far as like energy-wise, how they practice. I feel like they practice hard, and that was something that I noticed when I first got here. So I was able to pick up on that energy, and the team is a good vibe. Kind of a close group. You can kind of tell they not play like as far as childish games, but they kind of got a brotherly hood here, and that's a good thing that every team's need.
Tell us a little bit about Bobby T, man. He's an old school, he's an old head, and he's tough, man, and he demands certain things. But he's also, you're lucky to have a guy like this coaching you. Tell us a little bit about him.
Bobby T. Kind of grew on me when I first got here.
Is he tough on you?
Yeah, he's tough, but that's part of the game, and you need coaching like that. Tough on you. The thing with him is details, and that's kind of something that I didn't actually understand early in my career. But now that I've had him, I understand the details more. I understand the small things that I need to do as running back. Because when you play running back, you're like, man, I don't really need to know much. You feel me?
Yeah.
But Bobby T is strict on them details, make sure you know what other guys got, so you can make your job easier. So even when I was back home, I was like, man, I miss Bobby T, man. So, things like that, man. Good coach, good guy.
Old school guy, and man, tons of knowledge.
Tons of
drink
wisdom,
it up,
man, for sure.
Drink it up. How about Garendo? Have you been able to impart any wisdom to the young kid? He's got a lot of talent.
Since I've been here before, I was always kind of in his ear, kind of letting him know the things that I've seen that he can improve on, the things that I feel I can help him with. But Isaac is coming along, and Bobby T is hard on him as anybody else. So I feel like with Bobby T being hard on him, Isaac's going to be a good back in this league and throughout his career.
What's the key? Because he was a high school wide receiver, so there's body lean, there's protecting the football, there's a lot of things that running backs know that receivers have to learn, right? How tough of the transition? He hasn't played very much. He's only made one college start, so he's starting this week probably. He hasn't started hardly at all. If you were going to talk to him about what to expect in the NFL, what give him some advice. What would be some things you'd throw out there?
You could just look back at the history of the running backs here. Kind of anybody who kind of had that shot, they kind of always kind of excelled. If he want to look at that and kind of use that as motivation, that's what he could do. Because that's kind of how I'm looking at it. Like, I get my chance. So many running backs that came through here and excelled and was able to go on and have good careers after being here. Because the thing, so he can look at it like that, but also it's a chance. And the staff is kind of depending on you to be that RB1. You got to go. And he'll be great. He got all of it, backing him up, helping him out. So he's going to be fine.
Last week in the snow, it seemed like the offense had an advantage on the defense. You guys couldn't stop their run game, but they couldn't stop your guys' run game. Was that just because of the field conditions?
I think it could be field conditions. It's cold outside, so.
Yeah.
ain't nobody gonna keep wanting to hit all games.
Oh, yeah. How about
it's
the snow, though? I mean, is it tough? Do you like playing in that stuff, or do you, is it
it's
softer?
football
Or?
weather, so I guess you kind of gotta love it. But I mean, nobody really loves playing in the cold.
Yeah.
But it's football weather, so offense gonna have the advantage, obviously. But I mean, you got the disadvantage part of like throwing the ball, kind of be harder, but cuts harder. But you can run downhill, so that's the best thing. And nobody really want to tackle all day in the cold.
How about the Bears? Any thought on the Bears this week? Caleb's obviously, you're studying the defense, but give me your thoughts on Chicago in this matchup for you guys.
Should be a nice, good matchup. They've been playing these good games these last few games, and we're trying to come along and get a win. So that's our main focus: get a win, do whatever we got to do to beat the other team in front of us. So Chicago have been playing nice, and we plan on playing even better.
Two last ones for you. You played great player in college, and now you're in the pros, and you've played in the pros for a number of years. What's the difference? What's the difference between succeeding in college and succeeding in the pros? I mean, is there things that you could do in college that, man, you just at this level you just can't do?
I'm saying opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of in college. At least when I was in college, you can actually at least grow into being a starter. Over the years, you'll be like, okay, freshman, senior, junior. Now, my junior, I'm a starter. But here it's like you got an opportunity 1 year, and next year they might bring in somebody new to get that spot. So you kind of got to cash in on these small opportunities you get and go with it.
Last one. Fans always want to know about you guys. What do these guys like? Tell us a little bit about you. What are you into? What kind of things are you into outside of football? I mean, football is a lot to it. Lifting and dieting and working out. But when you're not doing football, what are you into? Movies?
When I'm not doing football, I love hanging around my family, my son, my lady. Love being around them. I like rapping in my spare time. It's
music.
It's therapeutic to me.
You make music.
Yeah, it's therapeutic to me to kind of get my story off. So that's another thing. And then,
you talking about freestyle? Can you freestyle? Or?
No, not freestyle. I like to write because I'm literally writing what I'm going through. So I just put it on the beat. So that's kind of how I do that. And I also think outside of football. So I'm getting into other businesses. I'm getting into. So that's kind of my thing. And I'm just going with that.
Hey, man, congrats to you. Good luck to you. Hopefully we'll see you between now and the end of the year. And thanks for stopping by on the show. Appreciate
Thank you always.
Ke'Shawn Vaughn.
Yes,
Appreciate you, Keith. Thanks.
There you go, Ke'Shawn Vaughn inside the Niner locker room. And, man, what a great player he was at Vanderbilt. And he may get the activation today. He could be up. It's going to be the Isaac Guerendo show, though. I mean, I think we pretty much know that. Isaac Guerendo is going to, fourth-round pick, really, really raw, but it'll be Guerendo, it'll be Patrick Taylor, it'll be Izzy Abanaconda, and maybe it will be Ke'Shawn Vaughn. The Niners brought him back to their practice squad just this week, and he's a guy that's had success in the NFL, both with Tampa and New England, and a guy that may get some run between now and the end of the year. Good dude. All right, we're going to take a timeout. David Lombardi's going to join us next. We'll get his thoughts on the Niners and the Bears and where the Niners sit. This is a gotta-have-it game for sure for the 49ers. They got 5 games left. They kind of have to run the table. We don't actually know exactly what they need to do because they're only 1 game out in the division, but they got to win. They got to win, So, and this game might be the outside of the Detroit game, this game against Chicago may be the toughest game left for the 49ers. We'll talk about the matchup next with David Lombardi as we get you ready for the Niners and the Bears. It's 49er Forecast on a Saturday on the Sports Leader.
KNBR 104.5 and 680, the Sports Leader.
That's I sit back and I try to be focused, but I've found the whole discussion on Kyle and like some of the stuff rather comical. I mean, we have won four of the last 5 division championships. We've been in 2 Super Bowls. Look, the standard here is to win championships, and we've fallen short of that. I understand, but we have an excellent head coach, and the fact people are talking about stuff like that, I do find it comical. We're 100% behind Kyle and what he brings to our organization, and like I said, our focus is really on the Bears and doing everything we can. That's where Kyle's focus is, and that's where all our focus is.
Faithful, time to make some Niners noise. 49ers Forecast with Larry Krueger now continues on your proud home of 49ers football. KNBR, the sports leader.
I hope everybody's having a great Saturday. Welcome back to 49er Forecast as we take you up towards 11 o'clock. And JD, John Dickinson, will have Just Dubs. Top of the hour. What is going wrong with the Warriors? Oh, my God. They can't win a game. And Anthony Edwards just said, Steve Kerr, yeah, how about this last night? I get the feeling that Anthony Edwards doesn't like Steve Kerr. But welcome back as we talk a little 49er football here on a Saturday. And joining us on the Yuma guest line is David Lombardi, who covers the Niners. He's a great follow on X at Lombardi himself, and he's with us on the Yuma guest line to chop it up and break it all down. Dave, thanks for joining us. Thanks for a few minutes.
Yeah, how's it going? Good morning.
Yeah, it's going great, man. And you heard John Lynch there. Kyle ain't going anywhere, despite what people want to say, and people want, Kyle this, Kyle that. The Niners need to get rid of Kyle. They were just in the Super Bowl. Let's all pump the brakes a little bit on get rid of the coach that has led you into 2 Super Bowls. And a lot of success, and yet that's the backdrop of some of the dialogue around the team this week. What do you make of it, Dave? And there's just is it just people who are disenchanted with the 49ers and they don't have any real solutions, or just looking for a solution? It doesn't seem like it makes any sense at all to even entertain the notion, but it's out there.
Listen, the 49ers fan base is tortured in a unique way because they won all these Super Bowls in the 80s and the 90s, and then they haven't won one in 3 decades. And on top of that, they have over a dozen playoff wins since then without a Super Bowl title, and every other team that has as many Super Bowl wins as them has multiple Super Bowl titles. So it's been a particularly frustrating last 30 years, and it's set up this really combustible, emotional ecosystem surrounding the 49ers that I personally think some people prey on. Some people prey on those emotions because it's easy to get clicks that way because there is that negativity, but it absolutely would make no sense for the 49ers to move on from Kyle Shanahan after 5 years of the type of success they've seen. This is the hardest professional sports league in the world. Unfortunately for the 49ers, Super Bowls are not 7-game series the way that you see in basketball or baseball. They've had a couple bad bounces in the 2 Super Bowls they've gone to under Kyle Shanahan. People aren't having the same discussion if a football doesn't bounce off of Darrell Luter's calf last year. In 2019, they were also probably a play or 2 away from that not going in the opposite direction against the Kansas City Chiefs. Any sane football mind knows that you stay the course and that you're going to have down years. They've played 60 games over the past 3 years. Kyle Shanahan has been in no way perfect. I've been very critical of Kyle Shanahan and the play calling this year. I don't think that he has his fastball this year. I don't think the entire Kyle Shanahan coaching tree is in a perfect spot this season when it comes to the chess match that you're playing. And it's a counter move situation. I think that Shanahan needs to do some self-evaluation over the offseason to make sure that he's on top of things. But to suggest that somehow on the hot seat is it's borderline predatory, I think, on some of these fans who are so starved for a Super Bowl because it doesn't compute at all. They've been to 4 NFC Championship games and 2 Super Bowls since the 2019 season. And if they stay this course, then they're going to win one at some point. Obviously, this is a dip. This is a dip in 2024, but that's what happens in NFL. It's a salary capped league, and when you do have some injuries and when you don't have your fastball in one particular season, you lose a couple games that you should have won early on, the season's not going to end up the way that you want it to end up. But if they were deciding coaches' job security based on seasons like this, every single coach in the NFL would get fired probably every 2 years. It'd be a 2 year anywhere. So I think that any 49ers voice, any 49ers fan who's talking in those kind of terms, that they have to realize John Lynch is right. It is comical. You've got to zoom out and you have to look at the big picture, and the big picture for the 49ers has been a very, very good one. You can't get stuck in the emotions of the 2024 moment.
Well, and just, there's a, Talladega Nights was a movie, it's like, if you're not first, you're last, and it's like, that's great in a movie, but, and it's great to have high standards. And I know people will be like, well, what would Eddie D do? Well, first of all, it was a different era. It was a different time. Eddie D would probably sign 5 free agents and pay them all well above market rate and have 3 nose guards. And, there was a time the Niners had Michael Carter, Jim Burt, and Fred Smirlis all at nose guard on one team.
Eddie DeBartolo wanted to fire Bill Walsh after the 1987 season, and Carmen Policy stopped him from doing it. That was after 87 when they lost to the Vikings in the divisional round. So people say, what would Eddie D do? Well, Eddie D let cooler heads prevail. Eddie D listens to the more rational people in the room before making a rash decision. And guess what happened? The 49ers won the Super Bowl in 1988. So I think that answers the question.
Yeah. There are reports that Brian Griese might be a candidate for the Michigan offensive coordinator job. Does that surprise you that Griese potentially could be on the way out?
I think he's done an awesome job. I mean, everything that Brian Griese seems to have touched at the quarterback coach position for the 49ers has turned the gold. I mean, obviously Brock Purdy has developed under his watch, but Jimmy Garoppolo had a good 2022 season for the 49ers. He's playing excellent football before he broke his foot. I think that even Trey Lance, when we saw his jump during training camp, obviously he was not going to beat out Brock. I thought that he was playing much better after Brian Griese showed up. So I think that he's an excellent quarterbacks coach, and it doesn't surprise me that he's in line for promotion elsewhere.
Let's talk about Brock Purdy. Some people say, there were an awful lot of people that didn't want Brock Purdy, that were pro Trey Lance, and were looking for Trey Lance to even start after Purdy kind of took control of the job. And when it didn't happen, there were an awful lot of people that said, well, I guess I'll back Brock Purdy, but just grudgingly. And now a lot of those same people are like, well, you can't pay him. Oh my God, don't pay him. And if you pay him, you certainly can't pay him, among the top quarterbacks. Where are you with Brock as far as the year that he's had, what he's put on tape throughout his entire career, and where you think his contract situation goes? Because if you said to me, Dave, who's Brock Purdy, I think he's Jalen Hurts. And I think he might even be better than Jalen Hurts. And I think he's going to get paid like a Jalen Hurts or like a Tua Tagovailoa, which means north of $50 million. And I'm okay with that. The Eagles are building a pretty damn good team around Hurts, and they've, it's not like paying him $50 million has eliminated them as a Super Bowl contender. People act like if the Niners pay Brock Purdy the going rate, that they will never compete for a Super Bowl again. How do you make sense of the Purdy contract talks? How do you think it's going to go?
Well, first off, I think people look at contract numbers way too simplistically. There is, in theory, a $65 million contract that is more cap friendly than a $52 million contract, because when you're looking at the average per year that is only one of the data points which tells us about the contract. It's going to be fully guaranteed money. There's going to be structure. And Brock Purdy is in line to get a contract that's at or near the very top of the market. But whether that is in terms of average per year or in terms of fully guaranteed money, I don't know. That's going to depend on how the negotiations go, what's important to Brock. A lot of times people say that the ATY is actually just a vanity number. So the 49ers obviously are going to try to find something that fits within their cap structure. But the key point is that they've already budgeted for this. They know that the market is the market. When you've got a good quarterback, and the 49ers clearly do, then you have to pay up for that. And it's the most important position, not only in football, maybe in professional sports. It's got such an outsized impact on what happens on the field, but it's not everything of what happens on the field. And we've seen that not only with Brock Purdy this year, but we have also seen it with Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is statistically performing at the same exact level. It's like 7.6 adjusted net yards per attempt, which is a really good way to measure efficiency, as his Super Bowl season, 2021. Yet the Bengals are 4-8 because they've got the second worst defense in the league. Brock Purdy's situation is not all too different than that. Brock Purdy was number one in QBR over 2022 and 2023. And you got so many people acting like he's in the 20s or something this year. Guess what? He's number 7. He's only fallen from 1 to 7. So I think the 49ers team around them, the defense has been playing bottom barrel defense. It's the Bengals and the Niners who have had the worst defense in the NFL over the past 2 weeks. So that I think also falls in line with the Burrow comparisons. But you look at where Purdy is at, he has a demonstrated ceiling, which is the most efficient quarterback in the league when everything was clicking around him, and he's now has demonstrated his floor. With everything is going terribly for the 49ers, it's only dropped down to number 7. So if the QB, put any other QB, put Dak Prescott in Brock Purdy's situation, put Trevor Lawrence in Brock Purdy's situation. If they had put together 3 years of football where their demonstrated ceiling was number 1 in QBR and their demonstrated floor was number 7, they'd be getting paid top of the market. End of story. So no matter, all these people have these Twitter fantasies and like, things are going to be different here. He's going to wake up one day and accept $20 million or $30 million. No, that's just not how economics work. Like, the 49ers have themselves a guy that's at the top of the league that, yes, he hadn't put up quite the numbers this year for obvious reasons because it's a team sport, and they're going to pay him accordingly, just like the business of football works. The 49ers are no exception to this. So I just think it's really, really important for us to actually think here and isolate quarterback play from team play and realize that just because the team is 5-7 doesn't mean that the quarterback has suddenly turned into a bottom 10 performer.
It's funny. Brian Billick used to come on with Fitz and Brooks, and I used to love those segments. And one of the things Brian used to say is, like, the hardest thing to evaluate in the NFL is the quarterback versus what's going on around the quarterback. And I think that's what we're watching here. I think there's an awful lot of people evaluating what's going on around the quarterback and attributing it to Brock Purdy. His equation is bogged down a little bit. The line has not been spectacular. There's been I think he's been forced to kind of run more because of it. And then when you start to run, Dave, I mean, you know this, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. You start to leave the pocket a few times, maybe prematurely. And then you're running a little bit more than you should at times. So there's that factor. And so I just think that, and then of course the receivers have not, he doesn't have the same weapons. I mean, there's been a downgrade in weapons. Ayuk didn't look like Ayuk. Then he got hurt. Debo has not looked like Debo. CMC was out most of the year. So there's been a regression among his weapons and I think along the offensive line. And a lot of it just kind of compounds itself on the head of the quarterback. That all being said, what do you make of the struggles of Pearsall the last 3 weeks? I asked Brock about it yesterday at the presser, and he's like, we're trying to get him the ball. It's not necessarily that he's never open. It's just that, it's just when he's been open, I haven't been able to get him the ball. When I've tried to get him the ball, he hasn't been open. And Brock's just kind of, of course, last week in Buffalo is almost a throwaway type game as far as any kind of passing evaluation is concerned. But Dave, what do you make of the last 3 weeks of kind of no production from Ricky Pearsall in weeks that we kind of thought maybe he'd be slated to produce?
Well, I think it's in a way emblematic of the troubles around Brock Purdy. You know, a lot of the stuff with Purdy that you're talking about, and is it Purdy's fault? Is it the team's fault? We have ways to measure the different situation that Brock Purdy is in this season versus last season. So I'll get to Pearsall in a roundabout way in just a second, but just to toss out a couple numbers at you, the 49ers average the lowest amount of separation at the time of catch or attempt in the league this year, down from number 11 last season. So in general, guys don't seem to be getting as open as they were in the past. Maybe that applies to Ricky Pearsall. Maybe it doesn't. I'll get to him in a second. 2, the 49ers have gone from perennially the number 1 team in the NFL in yards after the catch. This is for years on running, like since 2018, to last, like literally dead last. 3, the 49ers have not baked in, and this is related to the Yak stat, they have not baked in nearly as many layups in the pass game. Every single play caller rating, and they try to judge play callers based on the space they're creating on the field to try to isolate that from the space that receivers themselves generate against man coverage. Every single play caller rating is Kyle Shanahan having a down year in that regard. And entering the Buffalo game, he had attempted the fewest screen passes in the entire league. They threw 7 in Buffalo, so they're not last anymore. But I think a lot of that was because they had to throw screen passes, and that's good for the 49ers. They need to throw more. They need to bake in some easier plays for Brock Purdy so he's not having to run around and play prime Russell Wilson every single down. I think that was an issue early in the season when he was throwing deep a lot, but it was like Superman. He had to put on a cape every single time he dropped back to pass. Anyway, you've got all these stylistic issues with the 49ers offense. For whatever reason, I think a lot of it goes back to the Brandon Ayuk holdout, the fact that he never got back into form and then he tore his ACL. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey being unavailable for most of the season and all the other injuries. You have the 49ers not having been able to find their rhythm. Kyle Shanahan not being able to find the rhythm that he had in the past, not being able to use space, leverage, run success. Plus, the run game has been shaky this year on first down. They're down to number 10 rushing efficiency from number 1 on first down. I think all of this, Larry, has hurt the platform that the 49ers normally build, and that is you got the rushing platform and you run play action off of it. Kyle Shanahan is able to scheme guys open, especially rookies who are still finding their way in the NFL, and he's able to build confidence of his young receivers like Ricky Pearsall and get them integrated, and then things take off from there. So I think that the Pearsall evolution has been funny because pretty early on, right after he returned, it was the game against Tampa where he had that touchdown early, and then actually the game before he ran that out route where Brock Purdy threw that football before Pearsall came out of his break, and it looked like they were in lockstep. There was the game-winning drive at Tampa where Purdy found Pearsall as well. Everything seemed to be firing on all cylinders, right?
Oh yeah, things were looking good early on. Dave,
exactly.
We're right up against it, so we got a break. But I appreciate you jumping in, man. And once again, at Lombardi himself on X, and obviously a great follow on YouTube. And Dave, we'll see you tomorrow in Santa Clara. We appreciate you jumping on KNBR.
Awesome, thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Dave Lombardi stopping by, and we saw we had to cut him short there, but we're right at the end of the hour, man. Fast hour. Up next, JD with Just Dubs. It's around the corner. Can the Dubs ever win again? JD will discuss it next on The Sports Leader. Thanks to Kyle. Thanks to Dave. Thanks to all of you guys. Thanks to our guest earlier, Ke'Shawn Vaughn. Have a great Saturday. We'll see you tomorrow on The Sports Leader.
Dub Nation.
Big fat dub.
Whenever we can, wherever we can, we're talking hoops. And you know our guys will ramble.
Can you just email me the rest of this story?
This is Just Dubs with John Dickinson.
Dickinson's an underrated talent, 100%.
On KNBR 104.5 and 6.8. Streaming live at KNBR.com and on the KNBR app.
But if Dylan Brooks wanted to pick up his fourth foul early, as Kaminga lays it up and in, and you see how Dylan Brooks had to let him go. I was like, yeah, I don't want to get that foul.
One of the highlights of the week for the Warriors in a week that saw many but not enough wins as the Warriors lose last night to Minnesota. Another week of another blown lead, more games without Stephen Curry and Draymond Green. Jonathan Kaminga emerges there against Houston. But all in all, the Warriors' 12-3 start has turned into 13-9, 1-6 over the last 2 weeks. And we welcome you into Just Dubs here on a Saturday morning on KNBR, the sports leader. It's John Dickinson with you. 808 KNBR is the number, 415-808-5627 to give me a call or shoot me a text here between now and noon. Just an hour program and a lot to discuss for the Golden State Warriors. Appreciate everybody watching on YouTube and Twitch as well. But 808 KNBR to react to, again, another difficult week for the Warriors. You look since the last time we spoke in this time slot, the Warriors with kind of a clunker in Phoenix against the Suns. They blow the lead, as we mentioned, against Denver. The 11-point lead with 6 minutes to go. Blown leads have been a big problem here during this losing skid, which has reached 6 of the last 7. And just too many long scoring droughts has also been an issue for this team. Last night, second quarter, scoring drought. Warriors fall down 19. Third quarter, they're able to get within 3. And another long scoring drought against a Timberwolves team that can make teams have long scoring droughts, but it was back up to double digits. And then with the Warriors again early in the fourth quarter, making a run to pull within 3, it was the Timberwolves able to just turn the faucet off again on the Warriors down the stretch. And that one, Anthony Edwards taking over. Not the Jonathan Kaminga last night against Minnesota that we've seen a couple of times against Houston. And so you look up, and the Warriors find themselves losers now of 6 of the last 7, and really at somewhat of a crossroads, because there is a lot of conversation now here among Steve Kerr as to the fact that he's searching for combinations, and the starting lineup is changing every night, and players are in and out of the lineup now due to injury. You have Draymond Green missing a couple of games this week. You have Steph Curry needing to miss another game because of the bilateral knee tendonitis, and it's just created an unfortunate sequence of events, also highlighted by poorer play, in particular offensively. That the defense dipped a little bit for a handful of games immediately following the loss of DeAnthony Melton, but the Warriors' defense has actually bounced back and been, for the most part, pretty good. Really good in the game against the Rockets, but they've been good enough defensively to win some of these games if the offense had been playing at a little bit more of a consistent level. So Steve Kerr searching, and there have been injuries to Steph and Draymond, keeping them in and out of the lineup. And now last night you get more injuries to Andrew Wiggins and Moses Moody, and we'll see. That could have the potential to impact an even greater search for the right combinations. You've got Steve Kerr after the game last night saying he wants to continue to get a look at Jonathan Kaminga in the starting lineup, but Jonathan Kaminga plays the 4, and so that led Draymond Green to come off the bench, which I thought was mainly just a means to allow Draymond Green to ease back in after missing a couple of games. But the reality is he wanted Draymond to help organize the second unit, but also allow Kaminga to flourish. Kaminga really, as we've talked about so many times here over the last year, can only be effective when he plays power forward. In a perfect world, Draymond Green would be the Warriors' starting power forward with either a Kevon Looney or a Trace Jackson Davis playing next to him. Kevon Looney's been a revelation in the first quarter of this season, and we really are at the quarter pole here now for the season, a little bit beyond 22 games in out of the 82, and the Warriors off to the 12-3 start that turned into 13-9. So this team is right now pacing basically to be a 48-49 win team, which would be an improvement over last year, but not the level of improvement that I think the Warriors had hoped for getting off to the 12-3 start, and the level of improvement that they thought could vault them into potentially, at least in the regular season, the top half or the top 6 in the Western Conference, with a tangible goal to be avoiding the play-in tournament, which has bitten the Warriors a couple of times. They've had to play in it, including last year where they barely eked their way into that 10 seed and got blown out by the Sacramento Kings. So 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. That is the number to jump in and join the conversation here as the Warriors are searching and Steve Kerr is searching. And to go back to the point on Kaminga, man, high praise from Draymond Green and Steph Curry. I thought it was funny. You had those two as Kaminga, the highlight of the week for the one game that he had against the Rockets and the lone win for the Warriors in the last week here. You had Steph and Draymond almost as parents in their celebration of Kaminga's emergence and ability to take over that game down the stretch. And then that leads to the question, do the Warriors need more of that? Him and Wiggins dominated the Rockets really for a second time in 2 games. Kaminga carried the Warriors home. Do you need more of that with Steph Curry and Draymond Green available in an attempt to lessen the load on Steph Curry and Draymond Green? The issue, though, is Kaminga has not been able to be effective consistently in the ways that he was against Houston when Steph Curry and Draymond Green have been on the court. So now you add that to the mix, and it just makes everything all the more difficult. I mean, you've got Steve Kerr open-minded right now to looking at a future Hall of Famer in Draymond Green coming off the bench, separating him from Steph Curry at the beginning of games and the beginning of halves, to try and attempt to get better situations on the court offensively for Jonathan Kaminga. It really, unfortunately, has started to feel a lot like last year and a lot like 2 years ago, where the pieces that were fitting together so well through the first 10 to 15 games over the last 10 to 12 games, and more specifically the last 7 games, it's this guy's out and it causes a problem here. You fix that problem, it causes another problem there. You fix a third problem, and then there's 2 more problems that pop up. It just, and I think the loss of DeAnthony Melton, well, in some ways has been overstated. The one area it has not been overstated, because the Warriors were winning games with DeAnthony Melton not playing a lot initially and working his way through an injury before he came back and ended up tearing the ACL. And Melton's a guy that helps you beat the OKCs of the world and helps you beat the Bostons and helps you beat the Dallases. Like he's a guy that helps you beat good teams and win close games against good teams. But they were winning some games without DeAnthony Melton. He does take away, though, a guy who can play effective offense and effective defense. And so on top of everything else that we've just mentioned here to begin the show, you've got this scenario where now Steve Kerr is forced into offense-only players, defense-only players. You want Trace Jackson Davis out there for his defense, but his offense has just been miserable. You want Kevon Looney out there at the center, but then you can't play Draymond and Kaminga together. Kaminga and Wiggins are playing well together, but they have to play the 3 and the 4, which means Draymond's got to play the 5, and then you're undersized on the interior. They have nobody right now other than Brandon Pajemski who can effectively play the 2 and Brandon Pajemski's in a big time sophomore slump that he's tried to work his way out of, I think, over the last 4 or 5 games to varying degrees. The offense is just not there. The shot is not there. It's led to, I think, him look unconfident the last couple of games. I don't think he's looked unconfident the last couple of games more than I think he's heeding the advice of his head coach, which is maybe take a few less shots because your shot isn't falling and try to keep the ball moving and the offense moving and do the other things that make you an effective player on the court. You have Steve Kerr blasting Brandon Pajemski post-game Tuesday, and then you have Steve Kerr pregame yesterday, and we'll play both of these cuts for you coming up. You have Steve Kerr saying, yeah, Pods is going to play no matter what, and he's whether he's making shots or not making shots, he's going to play. And the truth is the Warriors now with Melton out and Buddy Hield struggling and Lindy Waters III not a factor, there aren't a lot of places he can go at that 2-guard spot. I think they still view Moses Moody more as a 3. They don't have any true 3s on the roster other than Andrew Wiggins. So a lot of these issues that seem like they were being mitigated during the 12-3 start are right back at the forefront here over the last 1-6. And again, you don't want to hear Steve Kerr ever say he's searching. That's probably the worst possible sign of where the Warriors are at. And unfortunately, it's starting to feel as if the Warriors have wasted completely this 12-3 start to the point now where, they're going to have to get healthy and figure out some semblance of a rotation again if they're going to be able to get on a run. And you're talking about Draymond coming off the bench and maybe not having Andrew Wiggins and Moses Moody here for a period of time, and Curry's in and out. So all of a sudden, this thing is I think, teetering on the brink of trouble, and the schedule's not getting any easier because the Warriors are playing the Timberwolves again, then the Rockets, who they've owned. We'll see how things shake out, whether it's OKC or Dallas. They've got a game against OKC or Dallas, either in Vegas or at Chase Center, depending upon what they do against Houston. And then they go to Memphis and play Minnesota again before coming home for a home-heavy slate to finish out December and 2024. 808 KNBR is the number. Let's get to JT in Oakland here up first on Just Dubs here on this Saturday. What's going on, JT?
Hey, how you doing? All excellent points by you, and you're right. It's either offense or defense. I think that, especially with Steph out, I think the opposing teams are saying, "Hey, Wiggins, Kaminga, they're gonna launch threes if we let them." Period. And I think that's a recipe for disaster for the Warriors because they're not 3-point shooters. The only one who really is right now is Moody. Buddy Hield's becoming Buddy Hield, like he has in his whole career. He starts off hot and he cools off and he gets traded. So I think they take too many threes, guys who should not be taking that many threes. Obviously, if you're open once in a while, sure. But I think that's a huge problem right now. They're not moving the ball like, classic Warrior basketball.
Yeah, and when they are moving it, it's finding a lot of those guys that maybe you don't want to shoot as many threes in positions where they really feel like they have to take the shot. And JT, they've been empowered to take the shot because that was such a focus of training camp. I mean, really from day one when this team met and went over their goals and their style of play and how they felt they could be the most effective this season, it was play with a lot of tempo and move the ball and really defend at a high level, which I think for the most part they've done other than a handful of games, but take the open three. And they, Wiggins, I think Wiggins is somebody that is very hot and cold. I think they're comfortable with Wiggins taking them. I think they've told Kaminga to take some, and he's hit a few more lately, which I think has opened things up on his drives. Like I think he's a lot more confident when he hits a couple threes. When he misses a couple threes, then he's unsure, and he's almost a beat slow in everything that he's trying to do. And I think that if he's a beat slow, that's the difference between getting to the basket and laying it up or dunking it and having to pull up with, a guy on him, which he's had some success with that pull-up shot, but also he's gotten caught in between at different times. And the true grown-up defenders that are his size or bigger in the league have been able to keep him at bay a little bit. When his game's a little bit off in terms of the timing. Podziemski's another one. Like, Podziemski shot it so badly. Gary Payton II has shot it poorly. And all these guys, I think, were guys that, the Warriors know they're not great three-point shooters, but they feel that if they're taking the right shots, they're going to hit enough of them. And the reality is, JT, they just haven't hit enough of them. A couple of those guys I mentioned specifically. I mean, Kaminga lately, but really Kaminga before the last week or two was not making the three ball with any significant level. Peyton's 4 for 22, 5 for 23 on the year. Podziemski, his struggles have been warranted and documented. So I think there's something to it, but I also think the ball movement has to lead to baskets in other ways, because a lot of the original plan was to set up these open threes.
Yeah. I have a question for you about Kaminga.
Sure.
Do you think he's one of those guys that he plays better when you give him the keys to the car, if you know what I mean? I call it the Jeremy Lin thing. They gave him the keys to the car, and he went off for like 3 weeks, and then they figured him out, and he was terrible. I'm not saying he's terrible, but I think he plays different if you give him the keys to the car, and he has a great athlete, but maybe not a great basketball mind yet. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. I think, the Houston game's a perfect example of that. Like he that was as much that was, and I slow to make these comparisons, but that was the first time for all of the discussion about how he views himself as a Kobe or a Kawhi or a Paul George or somebody like that. The game against Houston was really the first time he confidently moved on the floor like one of those guys, right? I'm going to drive hard. I'm going to pull up. I'm confident. Maybe even a little KD on a couple of those, looking plays. Obviously, KD's a much more smooth shooter, but it was really the first time he looked like a guy that believed on the court that he could do that kind of stuff with regularity. So I do think he was much more confident knowing that he had to be the guy and that there were no expectations for failure. And the way I have likened it, JT, is if I have said this a bunch of times, Kaminga, I think, would have preferred to go to a Charlotte or a Detroit early in his career and basically do what he did or try to do what he did against Houston every night, win 20 games. There'll be nights where he looks spectacular, but he'll grow potentially into that role. And the Warriors just have not, they're not a rebuilding team. They're not a team that doesn't care if they only win 20 games. And so I do think at times Kaminga's been really frustrated because I think he views himself as somebody that would already be there in another city and would have already been paid and would already have that trajectory of a guy who is going to be a guy on some level, even at the young age. So I think that's been part of the tug is the Warriors have tried to put his game in a box to fit with this team, and it doesn't look the way that it looked against Houston when Steph and Draymond play. That's a reality. They have not been able to find it because it's so against the rest of their offense that they try to run. So it's like to do it, you basically have to tell Steph, go stand in the corner because we're going to give the ball to Kaminga up top and let him go to work, and maybe he kicks it to you, and then you start to wonder, JT, is that really what you want to do? You want to make Steph a corner shooter for Kaminga? So it really creates. I think it's a tough situation because you almost have to sacrifice winning and expectations to develop Kaminga at that level. And the Warriors have just not had time to do it. And right now, I really don't feel like they have the time to do it. Although on the one night he gets the shot to do it, he looked really comfortable in doing it against the Rockets.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because
thanks, JT.
All right, man. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Good phone call. 808 KNBR 415-808-5627. Let's go ahead and take a quick time out. We'll come back. We'll hear some of the best sound clips of the week as it is. Just Dubs. We'll get into the YouTube chat as well. Just Dubs with JD here on a Saturday on KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
I want to look at it. I mean, we're trying to maximize Jonathan. Playing him with Wiggs, playing Loon to start with that group, means that Draymond doesn't have to guard the opposing center right from the get-go, which I think is important. Then we can, close with Draymond at the 5. So in theory, I like what it looks like, but we have to play better and we have to make better decisions.
This is KNBR, and this is Just Dubs with John Dickinson, streaming live on YouTube at KNBR 1045.
Is Steve Kerr overthinking it? I think he is. Bring Draymond off the bench. Kaminga can play the 4. He doesn't have to guard the 5 at the beginning of the game. You're taking one of your best players off the court. I mean, you're taking a future Hall of Famer off the court, and I get it. I mean, Draymond's still going to finish games. He's still going to play in that high 20s to low 30s in terms of overall minutes, and they're definitely trying to keep him fresh. We welcome you back. It's Just Dubs. JD John Dickinson here on a Saturday on KNBR, the sports leader. Warriors have lost 6 of the last 7. Their 12-3 record has turned into a 13-9 record, and they take on the Timberwolves again tomorrow over at Chase Center. Yeah, I don't know. I just think it's an overthink at this point. If you need to play Kaminga and start Kaminga at the 4, then you just got to play Draymond at the 5, in my mind. Like and now you've got the Andrew Wiggins injury, which could change the whole thing. If Wiggins is hurt, what do you do? Do you play Kaminga at the 3? He had to play some 3 in the fourth quarter last night, and as is the case really every time Kaminga has to play the 3, it doesn't really click. And the reason it doesn't click is because of the other players that are on the court that have to be on. Like it doesn't click with him at the 3, Draymond at the 4, Looney at the 5, because you've got, in essence, 3 non-shooters. Now, Kaminga shot it better lately, but you've got 3 non-shooters out there, and then you got to have Pajemski probably out there. So you only truly have Steph Curry out there at that point. So it doesn't work. If you had a big that could shoot, or you had another guard that you could put out there, the problem is you put Buddy Hield out there, and you're all offense and no defense, and Buddy Hield's not exactly been making shots lately. So when he's not making shots, he's a no offense, no defense player. He's a player that basically has to get benched at that point. So, yeah, Steve Kerr wanting to look at it. Draymond, it sounds like, is open to it. It sounds like Draymond really, and I get this, I respect this, doesn't want to have to carry the load of going up against the true bigs from Jump Street in games. And again, the Warriors at the beginning of the year had it mapped out. Kaminga was at the 3, which didn't work, and they went away from that really quickly. But Kaminga coming off the bench, playing the 4, Draymond playing with TJD and or Looney. It's become Looney because TJD has struggled. Wiggins is doing his thing. Like, right as they figured it out, they lost DeAnthony Melton. And, again, I don't want to put too much on losing DeAnthony Melton, but it sent the whole thing in a spiral where guys are going to have to get opportunities to play on certain nights that maybe are not the best matchup, or that maybe you would always just, in an emergency, go to the one two-way type player that can play offense and that can defend. And that would be a DeAnthony Melton. So let's hear a little bit more from Steve Kerr. 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627 to jump in and join the conversation if you so choose here on a Saturday morning. It's Just Dubs with JD here on the Sports Leader. This one from last night postgame, Steve Kerr on the Warriors being disorganized offensively and the reasoning and thought process behind bringing Draymond Green off the bench last night in his return after missing the last 2 games.
We're trying. We're mixing and matching. Obviously, I started differently. The reason for starting differently was to try to help the second unit get organized with Draymond. But we need some some more practice time. We've got to get our act together. We were much better offensively the first couple of weeks of the season, and last couple of weeks we've been struggling, which is why I've been searching lineup-wise. Tonight the game got away from us a little bit. Moses got hurt early. Wiggs gets hurt, I think, early second half. So that changed all the rotation patterns, but doesn't matter. We've got to have guys who are coming in and ready to execute and get to their spots, and we go through our stuff, and we're going to have to go over it more, obviously.
Yeah, they are going to have to go over it more, and they're going to have to be more buttoned up against a really difficult schedule as well. I mean, I just look at last night, and you've got Curry with Pajemski. That's going to be the starting backcourt. We'll hear what Steve Kerr had to say about that coming up in a little bit. Wiggins at the 3, but now you might lose Wiggins, Kaminga, and Looney. They like Kaminga and Looney, that pairing at the 4 and the 5, but that means Draymond comes out and comes off the bench. So you've got Draymond coming in for Kaminga now. You've got Peyton essentially backing up Wiggins. You put Moody in as a guard to take Curry out because Curry's got the early sub now. And now you lose Moody. Curry comes back in for Pajemski, and that's kind of your rotation there. And then Kyle Anderson is splitting time with the other bigs. And, Kyle Anderson is somebody that I think Steve Kerr has struggled to find time for because even though he's been effective as a defender and a connector, and I would probably say Kyle Anderson should be playing more. The issue is Kyle Anderson is not a great offensive player every night, but he is a good player. He is a smart player. But if Kyle Anderson is playing, you're either playing smaller because he's taking one of the center spots, or Draymond's playing the center, or he's somebody that you're putting out there that means you're taking Kaminga off the court because he's playing the 4, and Kaminga needs to play the 4. It just, no matter how you slice it, there's just all these one thing leads to another, that creates a problem. I think for the time being, assuming they have Wiggins, if Kaminga needs to start, they should just start Draymond and Kaminga together. And if Kuminga's not going to start, then you can go back to Draymond and Looney and bring Kaminga off the bench and try to work it that way. If Wiggins is out, I don't know what they're going to do. If Wiggins and Moody are out, they're either going to have to go small, play Pajemski and Buddy Hield, the old 3 guard, or they're going to have to play Kaminga at the 3, which has just been completely and wholly ineffective every time they've attempted to do it. So they are really caught between a rock and a hard place if Andrew Wiggins is going to have to miss a significant amount of time with the right ankle impingement. All right, we heard from Steve Kerr on Draymond coming off the bench. Let's hear from Draymond Green on Draymond Green coming off the bench and his thought process behind the decision, and Draymond's cool with it.
Coach just called and asked me. He said it's something he was thinking about, and he wanted to know if I was okay with it. Of course I'm okay with it. I have been one of JK's biggest fans since he's been here. And so if he has an opportunity to start, you can't be hypocritical. And they're like, yo, we want him to start, but it'll be for you. And you can't be like, it's not for me. Like, that don't work. Like, I'm a fan of his. I want to see him do well. So if his opportunity goes through me, then it is what it is. That's his opportunity, and he earned the opportunity. So that was kind of my rationale. He played extremely well last night. You want to give that another look, or 2 or 3 or 4, or however long. If it works, then you continue with it. I am a product of my vet being willing to take a back seat for me. You got to give back what came to you. That's what this is about.
All right, so Draymond Green there, again, admirable and appropriate. The question I would have, though, is, has Jonathan Kaminga really played at a level this season to where it's like, yeah, open it up for Jonathan Kaminga? I don't know. And we're going to hear from Steph Curry on this coming up here as well. But Kaminga's had some good moments in some games where he's been kind of mid. He had the great game against the Rockets, career game against the Rockets. Again, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I just don't see opening the door for Kaminga to just be, like right now as the move. And Curry's taking a different role, and Draymond's coming off the bench, and like it just something's amiss with that. Like, is he really ready for that? Is my point. It's not can he ever be that in his career. And look, it's year 4, so I think there's a certain portion of people that are saying he should have already been ready for it, and the Warriors have done a poor job of getting him ready for it. I disagree with that, but it's a fair part of the discussion. I just don't see this. It's peculiar to me that you've got Draymond Green so willing to say, hey, Kaminga is the guy, and it's try to get him more run, and he even said more about it. We're going to play that clip coming up here. But then at the same time, you've got Shams on ESPN yesterday saying, yeah, the Warriors are in a trade market for another star. Well, if the Warriors are in the trade market for another star, then that means Kaminga and maybe Pajemski and half the roster are going to be going elsewhere to bring a second star back. So it just something is odd with the whole let's just unleash Kaminga and let him go. And because he has not been anywhere near consistent enough this season. He shows flashes, and the Rockets game was the biggest, most extended flash because he did it the whole game. He had the other Rockets game that he helped to close and dominated down the stretch in that one. But it feels like a little too much too soon with the season kind of spiraling to like hand the keys to Kaminga as the lead dog. I don't know. I almost feel like that you've got Draymond and Steph are almost being a little too nice. They're being a little too deferential at this point. But that too could be an indicator of the simple fact that those two know that they just can't carry it at the level that they have in the past, and the ability to allow for Kaminga to be a bigger part of soaking up lead scoring duties or number 2 scoring duties or whatever will help to keep them fresh. The question I have is how many games are you winning if you're doing that? And again, the thing that I keep coming back to is the fact that the Warriors have to play completely differently if you want Kaminga to be the Rockets Kaminga. Like if you want him to try to be that guy, there are going to be a lot of nights where you take a lot of lumps, and there are going to be a lot of nights where you look around and go, well, why wouldn't you just be putting the ball in Steph Curry's hands? So it doesn't add up for me. It doesn't add up for me. Draymond, though, continued with the high praise. So let's play the next one here on the move to the bench and just what it all means in the grand scheme of things, and his view on Kaminga and his future.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm sure I'll close most halves, but not starting is not starting. You're taking on a different role, and so, yeah, I don't necessarily look at it as like this demotion. I'm a starter in the NBA. I know that, so I don't look at it like that, but if it's something to try to help this team win, I'm always going to be for it. I hate losing. So if you got something that's going to help us win, you're not going to get an argument from me. As I've always said, I care about this organization, and I know a lot of people in this organization, including myself, think he's next. And so if he's next, at some point we got to see it. And for him to do that, he needs the opportunity. If the opportunity falls on you, being me, then that's what it is. And you got to figure it out. He's earned the right to get that opportunity. And when I come back here in 10 years and I'm even more great than I am now, I want to see this franchise thrive in. So if he's the guy that's going to do that, which I think he's more than capable of, great. It's perfect.
Again, admirable comments, but is it really that time in a year where a couple of weeks ago the Warriors were 12-3 to hand it over I don't know. And I think there's probably an internal debate as to what the best course of action is. It just changes the way they have. Like, Kaminga can be a part of it and was a part of it when the Warriors were winning and they were 12-3. But this team, with losing some of the depth and the injuries and all that, maybe it's proving to not be as sustainable. But, yeah, I just find it interesting. Again, Draymond saying all the right things, and you can call it admirable as a vet. Like, I have no problem with that. That's all appropriate, but I just kind of raise an eyebrow like, huh? Like, okay. You guys want Kaminga to be the one when y'all are out there? Okay. It just doesn't that to me is a recipe to win in the low 40s and be a 10 seed and fighting for whatever. And it also doesn't jive with the impatience that's out there floating around that the Warriors are looking to make a big move. It doesn't all add up. Doesn't all add up. You're not looking to go get another star and also at the same time looking to hand the keys to Jonathan Kaminga because he had one great game against the Houston Rockets. With Steph Curry and Draymond Green not a part of it, by the way. So we shall see. All right, 808 KNBR, 415-808-5627. We'll hear from Steph Curry on Jonathan Kaminga because the high praise continued in the aftermath of the loss to the Timberwolves. Also, more Steve Kerr on Brandon Pajemski and Shams. He might be in on the Kaminga proposition here because he was talking yesterday on ESPN about the Warriors looking to go get a star, but there was a spin to what he had to say with respect to that as well, related to Jonathan Kaminga. So 808 KNBR, we'll come back, more cuts, we'll wrap things up. It's just Dubs here on a Saturday on the Sports Leader.
KNBR 104.5 and 680, the Sports Leader.
Yeah, that Bear Niner game is Sunday. If you're leading the drive, this will be big. Steps three to end it. Drops in the triple. He's beating his chest, too. He knows how big that was.
Live from downtown.
Hurry, way downtown. Bang! Bang!
This is Just Dubs with John Dickinson on the Sports Leader. Streaming live at KNBR.com and on the KNBR app.
All right, final segment. Just Dubs on a Saturday. 808 KNBR if you want to jump in and join the conversation. Appreciate the folks watching on YouTube and Twitch. Back tomorrow, a YouTube-only edition of Dubs OT. Greg Silver's going to be by for that one. Long day out at Levi's. 49ers and Bears, and the Warriors are taking on the Timberwolves. And then join Greg for a YouTube-only edition of Dubs OT tomorrow, right around 7:45, 8 o'clock, whenever that thing goes final. We'll probably go for about an hour, maybe an hour and 15 minutes, and give some instant reactions on everything that's been going on with the Warriors here of late, as they have dropped 6 of the last 7. All right, let's continue here with some of the sound that we were playing. And a lot centering around Jonathan Kaminga, a lot centering around Draymond coming off the bench. Again, I've said it a couple of times already. I'll say it again. If you need to start Kaminga and get his offense in there, that's fine. You got to just play Draymond at the 5 and start him and hope that Wiggins is healthy and continue to roll. I would with Podziemski and Steph, and just build the rest of the rotation around that. Doesn't sound like Steve Kerr's necessarily going to do that. Sounds like the Wiggins and potentially Moody injuries could change whether Steve truly is going to stick with Draymond Green coming off the bench. And if Wiggins and Moody are out, they may be forced to play Jonathan Kaminga at the 3, which has been a struggle for him. But interesting to me that you've got Draymond Green and Steph Curry. Let's hear from Steph. Draymond saying he cares about the Warriors in the future and the folks that see Jonathan Kaminga being the next star of the team, and he's earned the opportunity to try and get out there and get that chance. And he's open to taking a step back, much as David Lee took a step back for him. He didn't mention David Lee by name, but that was what it was back in 2014. And I don't know, the whole thing just seems a little premature. And that's, not a knock on Kaminga's ability to help this team, but you really want to almost hand him the keys and say he's got to be the guy. I don't think that bodes well for the success of this team this season on a nightly basis. Now, maybe it ramps up Kaminga's trade value. I also don't think it coincides with the belief that the Warriors are still out hunting for another star. Regardless, though, let's hear from Steph, who post-game addressed his take on Jonathan Kaminga and where he's at and the necessity to have him take on a bigger role.
To be good, you saw it in the Houston game. You've seen flashes. We need him to be the best version of himself. We have to be able to figure out whether it's play calls, whether it's certain rotation or lineup combinations, what can unlock his ability to get downhill, put pressure on the basket, demand attention from the defense, and he's a big weapon for us. So yeah, and especially the way the early season's gone, games that we've handed away after big leads. Tough scoring nights like tonight, you gotta the challenge of this team. We're a different team than we've been the last 3 years, and the experimental phase of trying to unlock new looks, new go-to sets, put the ball in his hands. It's time for that for sure, because we haven't had results otherwise. So we got to lean into that, and it might not go well every night, but that's what we're trying to build.
I imagine a decision like bringing Draymond off the bench doesn't get made without your knowledge. How involved were you in that process?
Same process with all type of decisions. You give your input. Like I said to Jeannie's question, it's about the culture and the commitment of how we do things. Like, I've come off the bench plenty of times. Draymond's come off the bench. Wiggs, JK, like everybody's been in that situation where we're trying to figure it out. So who knows how long it'll last? Who knows if it's 1 game, 5, who knows? Every day is us trying to figure it out, especially when you're in a situation we've been in where, we start 12-3 and been on a big slide. We got to, be all in on that.
Yeah, and look, I don't think it has anything to do with the ego of coming off the bench or anything like that. It's just, to me, it's to the point of what Steph was addressing with respect to the best combinations and the best lineups and the best ways to get, maximized performance from everybody on the roster. And so, that sounds more, I would say, aligned in terms of the acknowledgement that it might not go out well every night if you're putting the ball in Kaminga's hands, because we've seen it. He struggled at the end of the game against OKC when they gave him a lot of run. He struggled against Denver when he attacked the basket, even though he had a pretty good game up until that point. So there have been varying degrees of success, but I don't disagree with the fact that he's a weapon. It's just a matter of how you go about organizing the rotation and those combinations that set up the way that you want to play down the stretch in games. And if playing him and allowing for him to have a bigger role lessens the impact of others, then I don't necessarily think it's a winning formula or a winning combination. It's one thing to do it against the Rockets a couple of times when you don't have Steph and you don't have Draymond. You didn't have Draymond in the overtime of the first game that the Warriors won against the Rockets in Houston back in the early part of November. And so it really was the same type of scenario. Clear the deck, let him go against a team where he's a good matchup. And so, again, I don't disagree with the selflessness part of it or the you need to have lack of ego part of it, but I just don't know that looking to capture more of the Houston game in other games when the regulars are playing is necessarily the right move. But we shall see. It almost hints of a little bit of desperation. Well, nothing else has worked. Might as well try this. The kid really wants to kind of be that guy, so let's give him an opportunity to do it. Might not work every night, which is very honest, because it probably won't. And, there will be nights that, hey, why wasn't Steph Curry getting more of an opportunity? If you really lean in on it at the level that maybe the Warriors. Again, I don't know. I feel like part of this is part of this is just, it just seems like it's just kind of an exaggeration of the potential Kaminga impact from Steph and Draymond. It's odd. It's something is amiss there. The fast flip toward, yeah, hand it to him. Let him do it. Let's go. Even if they realize that they maybe can't carry it at the level that they've carried it in prior years. So we shall see. Final cut here. We'll go ahead and skip the Steve Kerr cut on Brandon Pajemski. We played that last night on Dubs OT. But let's hear from Shams Charania of ESPN. Yesterday, during the afternoon, he was on their show and discussing what the Warriors are looking to do right now in the trade market, and then it basically diluted into something else. Here's Shams.
So from what I'm told, essentially right after the game tonight in Philadelphia, the Grizzlies beat the 76ers, as we just saw right there. And Joel Embiid, and a columnist who recently wrote a column on Joel Embiid and referenced his his late brother and his son. They got into a verbal back and forth. They had an emotional moment in that locker room, and it turned into a physical altercation. From what I'm told, Joel Embiid shoved that columnist, and now sources tell me, and a league spokesperson tells me, that the NBA has commenced an investigation into the situation. They're aware of the reports, and they are starting an investigation into Joel Embiid shoving a columnist and getting into a physical altercation with a columnist in the locker room. I'm told that there was a lot of yelling, and then security, other members of the team got involved in that situation to break it up. But Joel Embiid got into a physical altercation, shoving a columnist in the postgame locker room tonight.
Obviously an unfortunate incident. Anytime you have players and members of the media.
Yeah, this is not that's not the clip. The clip was Shams talking about the Warriors looking for another star. That was the clip from about a month ago when Joel Embiid got into an altercation with a reporter in Philadelphia. I guess we had that clip. We don't have that clip. Bottom line, Shams said the Warriors are looking for another star. So we'll see. And they want to get a number 2 clear cut next to Steph Curry. Again, that is interesting considering the high praise not only from Steph Curry but also from Draymond Green with respect to Jonathan Kaminga's potential to be that guy. I think we have the cut now. So we'll go ahead and play the cut, and then we'll wrap the show. Here's Shams, we hope.
What exactly are the Warriors looking for when we sort of hear they may be in the market to make a move?
Malik, I'm told that the Warriors are on the real hunt for a star, a playmaker, a scorer alongside Stephen Curry. And you think back to the summer when they pursued Lauri Markkanen with the Utah Jazz. They made a pitch for Paul George as a free agent with the Clippers. And the debate with the Warriors and teams that look into that situation is, for them, are they going to find that externally outside of this roster currently, or will it be in-house with a player like Jonathan Kaminga? And last night you look at it, 33 points, the first time he plays 30 minutes in a game all season. He's shown with his output that as his role elevates, so do his stats at different points. And that relationship between Jonathan Kaminga and Steve Kerr, something that Warriors officials have been monitoring over the last year or so, and how he fits in when Stephen Curry and Draymond Green are back in the lineup will be interesting to monitor. But the Warriors' future will be shaped over the next few weeks and the next couple months before the trade deadline. How can they get that next championship with Stephen Curry and Draymond Green?
So still looking for the championship-type player to pair with Steph and Draymond, but then that hint of could it be Kaminga? And I think that's what they're internally trying to grapple with right now is either Kaminga has to become that guy, which is something I said a year ago, or he has to be part of who gets moved to bring in that guy. But those types of players are not just readily available, which I think only compounds the Warriors' inaction, shall we say, in terms of looking to try and improve and upgrade the roster. But I still lean toward what the Warriors have pretty bluntly told us, which is the fact that they're impatient. They like their team, but they're impatient, and they're really looking to have the potential to add in a big way. All right, we'll continue that conversation in the coming days and the coming weeks, and it will continue first and foremost tomorrow, Warriors and Timberwolves again, and we'll have a YouTube-only edition of Dubs OT for you immediately following that one. We'll talk to you Wednesday as well. For Kyle Chung, I'm JD, just Dubs, here on KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader. KNBR and KNBR FM, your home of San Francisco 49ers football.